Welcome to Capital Courage, where politics meets bold ideas and fearless conversations.
We're here to break down the biggest stories in Virginia and across the country with hot takes, real talk, and a little fun along the way.
Whether it's policy fights, political showdowns, or leaders making waves,
we're diving into the courage it takes to stand up, speak out, and shake things up.
So let's get into it. This is Capital Courage with Rena and Ryan. Well, welcome to Capital Courage. We are so excited today to have a special guest with us, Tiffany Muller. She is the president of End Citizens United, Let America Vote, and the End Citizens United, Let America Vote Action Fund. And if you are not aware of the organization, I'm really excited just because I feel like I even just have seen name recognition, right? And all of your guys' good work over the past decade everywhere. So this is so exciting for me. But End Citizens United is fixing our democracy by getting big money out of politics and protecting the right to vote. For 10 years, they've been the leading voice for meaningful campaign finance reform. And Tiffany here is the president, and she's been with them since its founding, right?
Yeah, since 2016, and it is hard to believe that here we are at a decade. A long ton has changed. I mean, in 2016, I often tell people in 2016, going into that presidential primary, as you may remember, there was a seat open on the Supreme Court. That we were all fighting to try to get Merrick Garland confirmed for. He had been nominated by President Obama, and Mitch McConnell was blocking it, right? He infamously blocked this Supreme Court seat for basically more than a year. And I always say, like, Merrick Garland would have been our fifth vote to overturn Citizens United. We were that close.
That's crazy.
And now we have a court that is so hostile to our democracy and has spent the last decade really undermining the core values of our democracy, and everything from obviously gutting the Voting Rights Act to their decisions around gerrymandering to obviously the money in politics. And then, of course, the kind of carte blanche attitude they've taken to this administration and the corruption and power grabbing out of this administration. So a lot has changed in a decade, but we are here and we are excited to be with you all and to talk about all of these important topics.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. And there is one thing just from your bio, because I'd be remiss, because I just think it's cool. And I've only been in Topeka once. But it says here that you began your career in government and politics when you became the first openly gay public official in Kansas in 2004, which that's incredible.
Wow.
As a member of the Topeka City Council. I drove through it and stayed there for a night. I feel like but I feel like people may have an idea of Kansas, but it's an artsy little town. I was really impressed.
I love Kansas, obviously, and I love Topeka. And, it's very similar to some of those other Midwest capital cities. And, there's a lot around the capital. There's some gorgeous parks there. I actually did my undergrad there at Washburn University, and it's just a great liberal arts school. I was a social worker before I turned to doing politics
work.
What a career. What a career. And, getting to be on the Topeka City Council and being kind of the first openly LGBTQ public official in the state of Kansas. I mean, I was mid-20s. I was a kid in so many ways. And so looking back on it 20 plus years later, I'm really so proud of what we accomplished there and the foundations that we built. We were able to expand anti-discrimination protections for the community. Those protections have withstood the test of time.
That's amazing.
And, actually kind of crazy. It turns out I have been the only LGBTQ member of the Topeka City Council in its entirety. Like, there has not been someone since me. But what you did see is that, in Kansas, you now have someone like Sharice Davids, from Kansas 3, who is serving and doing just an incredible job fighting for Kansans. And I'm so proud of the work that she does, but proud of the work that so many of us did back in the early 2000s to fight back against the hate that we were seeing, the targeting of our community,
Yeah.
and really fighting for what was right. And I feel like the work I'm doing now is a kind of a continuation of that thread. It's about who gets to have voice and power in our democracy, who gets to be seen and heard, and who public officials are going to listen to. And so, whether it was fighting for the LGBTQ community or fighting against the just conglomeration of wealth and power into the hands of a few at the expense of all the rest of
Yeah.
us, that feels like the through line of the work that I've done.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like it's a great kind of segue too. I feel like the topic on everyone's minds right now as summer is closing and school starting again, election season is here, it's up and running. You know, we had some pretty contentious primaries that the Democratic Party just went through, as well as some Republican primaries, but a lot of eyes were on the Democratic primaries. But just as we inch closer to the midterms, what is kind of different about when you first formed and Citizens United and what we're seeing now, especially as it relates to like AI and big tech money and just kind of like the massive influence and kind of scale that out for us. What does that massive influence even look like?
Yeah, it is so hard for us to wrap our minds around the scale and scope of the money that we are seeing flood into our elections. You know, in 2008, the cycle prior to Citizens United being decided, billionaires spent about $16 million to influence our elections, right? It's a lot of money, no doubt about it. But in 2024, they spent $2.5 billion to influence our elections. And to put that in, again, I think people have a really hard time with millions and billions. So to put that into perspective, if billionaires spent $1 million a day in 2008, it would have only taken them 16 days to reach the amount that they ended up spending. But in 2024, it would have taken them 7 years of spending $1 million a
Wow.
day. 7 years, right? Like that's the difference of
Yeah,
scale
that's
and
the
scope we're
scale.
talking about. And in 2024, the entire election spending was, you know, around $16 billion. We don't know completely because there's also been this increase in dark money, which is undisclosed money. You don't know both where it comes from. You don't even know what all is being spent. And so, you know, we estimate the best that we can. This election cycle, once again, we're seeing new records are going to be hit in terms of just scale and size and scope of the money. We have multiple Senate races that are going to be over $1 billion a piece, right? $1 billion for a Senate race. You know, we work with Senator John Tester from Montana, and he talks about the first time he ran in 2006, his entire election, general primary, everything, both sides, Republican and Democrat, was a total of about $27 million. And in 2024, when he unfortunately lost, it was $275 million for the same amount of voters, a
The
10
the
times
increase is
increase.
crazy.
Yes, crazy. Okay, so what does this actually mean for people? Because, and then I'm going to talk about AI and crypto.
Yes.
What it really means for people is that they feel more and more disconnected from their government. They feel more and more left behind. They feel more and more shut out of the system. And what we see is a government that functions or really doesn't function, right? What we see is gridlock in Congress on all of our biggest pressing priorities. And if you trace those back, you can trace that back to the money in our politics. So whether it is tackling, you know, prescription drug prices or
Hmm.
grocery prices or housing crisis or utility costs or you name it, right? Like we can keep going. Gun violence, climate change, all of the pressing priorities what we see is the moneyed interest blocking real progress that people are demanding. And the more that that progress is blocked, the more that nothing gets done, the more that people are frustrated with a broken system. But the system isn't just broken, it is rigged, right? It is working really, really well if you are a corporation
You're like,
or a
this is great.
billionaire. Yeah, they're like, woohoo, here's another $4.9 trillion of tax breaks for me
Yep.
while you get kicked off your health care, right? And they word these things as if they are inevitable, as if we have just run out of money. We have not run out of money. These are policy choices. You had money to give $4.9 trillion to corporations and billionaires, and then you choose to kick tens of millions of people off of healthcare. That is a policy choice. The great news is policy choices can change if we get the right people in office. Yeah. But the special interests have definitely taken notice. And so AI is a great example. AI is investing, the current estimates have it at about $300 million this election cycle alone. And they aren't doing that out of the goodness of their heart or just because they happen to like a few candidates. They are doing that because they expect a return on that investment, right? They expect those people to go to Congress and to fight back against regulations that would crack down on the data center proliferation, that would make sure that there were safety mechanisms in place for AI, that looks at the environmental concerns around AI. Yep. Right? And crypto is the same way. Crypto has about $150 million on hand to influence this election. We've been seeing them spend tens of millions of dollars in primaries, both Republican and Democrat. They're trying to buy off both sides of the aisle. They don't care, right? They just want someone who is going to rubber stamp what they want so that they can keep lining their pocket at the expense of all of us. And so it is a size and scale and scope with these tech industries that we have never seen before. And I think we are going to only see it increase over these next, what are we at, 70 days?
Yeah.
It is going to be, they have a flood of money they can really unleash over these next 70 days.
When you talk about AI and crypto, I think Ryan, we may have mentioned even on the show and some stuff that we think about in Ryan and I's like day jobs or how important it is when you're telling the story to kind of like name the enemy. And so when you're saying AI companies, like those are Microsoft, Google, Meta, like those kind of folks, right? Like huge tech corporations that rely on things like data centers to keep going.
Yeah, plus it's OpenAI, Anthropic, right? Anthropic's kind of taken a pro-ish regulation stance.
Yeah.
OpenAI, I think, and Sam Altman have actually been some of the biggest contributors to the AI-sized super PACs. And they are fighting, and that's who runs ChatGPT, obviously, for folks who don't know. And they are pushing for no or minimal regulation so that they can just continue to run without guardrails, right? And what we know is that voters, Republican, Democrat, Independent, doesn't matter. Voters are really concerned about AI and about the unchecked growth of AI, right? They're concerned about what it's going to do to our economy and what it's going to do to their jobs. They're concerned about the mental health aspects that we've seen, particularly for teens. They are concerned about the security aspects. I mean, especially as we see these things hacking into other companies and into secure services. And of course, they're concerned about data centers in their backyard. And, right there in Virginia, we have the most data centers of anywhere in the country with over 600 facilities in Virginia alone. And, they take massive amounts of water. They drive up utility costs. They're loud. And while they may create jobs on the construction end, they don't create long-term jobs for the community because they function pretty much without too much staff, right? So there's some real big concerns. And right now, the AI companies are winning this regulation fight by just blocking anything from happening. And the job of Congress, it is not that you can't listen to business, but the job of Congress is to actually represent the people and to be a check on unchecked power and to have accountability for these kind of industries, whether it was big tobacco or whether it was the car
Right.
companies back in the day or whatever else. Their role is to be a balancing force, a balancing lever between businesses running amok and people getting hurt. And so they currently aren't doing their job because they're more sold out to the money than they are to the people.
This might sound like a funny question given just the tenor of the problem that you've articulated with the scale of money and that sort of thing. But, a thing that and I think about, talk about in our day jobs is just sort of the what feels at least like a very unique, maybe one shot kind of opportunity to engage voters on all sides of the political spectrum who, to your point, are against AI, have concerns about it, are turning rapidly and increasingly against data centers and AI. It feels like we have this very unique moment to capture some of that public sentiment and hopefully do something with it. So my question to you is, what gives you hope right now? I mean, especially faced with that scale of money, which is not, as you said, the Supreme Court's not going to tone that down anytime soon. We don't expect the size or scale of the money to decrease anytime in the near future. But what are you focused on at End Citizens United, and what do you think gives you hope about where voters are?
Yeah, it's a great question and one I think about a lot. And let me start with I actually have a ton of hope. And I have a ton of hope because we have the people with us, right? They might have the money, but we have the people. And what we have seen across the country this year is that the people are defeating the big money, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't want their elections to be bought. We've seen this play out in primary after primary, frankly, on both sides of the aisle, where people are standing up to big outside forces or big industries coming in and trying to buy these elections. And saying no, like we get it. If you're coming in to try to buy this election for somebody, then that's not in our best interest. And they're standing up and using their vote to push back because at the end of the day, the money doesn't vote, people do. And so, I travel the country all the time with candidates, and it's one of my favorite things to do because I get out on the road and talk to people. And the people are showing up, they are packing the rooms, there's so much energy. And they come with both this sense of like anger, right,
Mm-hmm.
about how broken the system is, and a resolve. They are not about to give up our country. They are going to keep fighting for it however they can in whatever ways they can. So whether that is showing up at a town hall or phone banking or knocking doors or voting or getting their friends to vote, the people have a great belief in our country. And we've seen this country change very rapidly in the past, right? We started this podcast talking about my work in doing gay rights in the
Yeah.
early 2000s. And that was a time when there was the anti-gay marriage amendments
Yep.
being put on the ballots all across the country. And I was convinced when those passed, I would never be able to get married, right? That we wouldn't see marriage equality in my lifetime. And it was just 9 years later that the Supreme Court overturned DOMA, and 2 years after that, that they granted marriage equality to everyone. And here we are. Like, that's such a fast change.
Yeah.
Okay, so the people give me hope. That's number one. The people not being willing to just like roll over for the big money absolutely gives me hope. Here's the other thing, Ryan. If we get the right people in office, there is a ton we can do legislatively that we don't need a constitutional amendment or the Supreme Court to do. We can do everything from like making sure people's right to access the ballot box is protected and is the same across the country, no matter who you are. So we can do things like early voting and vote by mail, and right, like we can actually extend access to the ballot box. We can put real guardrails around redistricting so that we don't see these redistricting wars that we are seeing right
Yeah.
now. And we can do things around the money in politics. We can make sure there's disclosure and transparency and a functioning federal elections commission, and we can stop super PAC coordination. And there's a ton we could do with a simple vote of Congress if we just had the right folks in office. And what I'm excited about is that we have a wave of reformers running across the country on these issues because the voters are so fed up. So we're running this campaign called Unrig Washington, which is three simple things. It is a ban on congressional stock trading,
Yeah.
don't take any corporate PAC money, and end the dark money. And we have over 280 candidates that have signed up for it, which is a new record. So
That's
we
amazing.
are super excited about that. And I think it shows that there is this movement building where the people are like, enough is enough. We are
Yeah.
done with all of this big money, and we are taking we're taking our political system back. Sorry, that was a long answer,
No, that's
but
perfect.
we talk so much about the problem. I think it is important for people
A
to know
hundred
that like
percent.
there are things we can do.
Yeah.
So
We're not helpless in
Hmm.
this situation. This has been a great conversation to close out. Our name is Capital Courage, and we really started this because we wanted to kind of lift up courageous fights that were happening. You named a couple of like, even just like policy issues, talking about like prescription drug pricing and things like that. So wanting to lift up like not only people but organizations, and fights just going on of like standing up to the big guy and doing the hard thing, because it's right. And so, not to put you on the spot or pick any favorite children, but just for our listeners, like who's a candidate this cycle, that you want to kind of lift up that folks should be looking into, whether it's state legislative, or running federally, across the country, that you're like, this person is courageous for stepping up, and they're in it for the right reasons.
there are, you know what's so exciting about this cycle is there are so many of them, right?
That's
And
amazing.
I've started to run into a problem because I love to tell candidates when they're my favorite, and it turns out I have too many favorites this cycle, and they've
They
started
maybe
to
talk to
catch
each
on to
other.
that.
Yeah.
They're calling me out on it. So first of all, for everybody watching, you can go to incitizensunited.org and see all of our endorsed candidates. You can
Amazing.
also go to unrigwashington.org and see every candidate that's signed up to take the Unrig Washington pledge. Because look, if folks haven't taken that pledge, you should ask them why,
Yeah,
right? Like why or why
100%.
not? Like these are common sense reform policies. Okay, now I will choose some favorites. I think we have a great shot to take back the House and the Senate, but for this, I will focus on the House, and a few that maybe don't get uplifted quite as
Yeah.
much. First, they're in Virginia. I love Shannon Taylor, who is running in Virginia 1. She is
Yes.
fantastic and really running on an anti-corruption
Yeah.
message.
Yeah,
A
it's been great.
prosecutor who, yeah, it's great. So that's one I would lift up. Iowa has everything. Iowa's got a competitive governor's race, competitive Senate race, and 3 of the 4 House districts are competitive. So out of all of those, I'm going to tell you to look at Iowa 2 with Lindsey James. It is the open House seat because Ashley Henson's running for Senate, and Lindsey James is a pastor and a chaplain, and just amazing. And someone said the other day that sending her to Congress would be like sending Mr. Rogers to Congress, and they are not wrong. She is that like ball of sunlight.
Yeah.
So check out Lindsey James in Iowa too. And then just for fun, let's go up to Montana. Montana 1 with Sam Forstag, who is the see, people know Sam.
Yes, we
He's
do.
the
So
the
people know
smoke
Sam.
jumper.
Yes, we do.
He was a smoke jumper. He is a union worker. He is incredible. That district is really winnable.
Yeah, I'm excited for
Take a
that
look.
one.
Yeah, take a look at Sam. And again, check out our endorsed candidates on our website at incitizensunited.org. And you can also sign up and join us.
That's great. And we'll put information in our show notes as well and on social media.
Awesome.
It was so great chatting with you. This was super cool.
It was so great to be on. Thanks for having me and can't wait to come back.
Thank
Thank
you so much.
you. Bye.
Thanks. That's a wrap on this episode of Capital Courage.
If you like what you heard, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and tell your politically savvy and maybe not so savvy friends about us.
Join us for new episodes, new takes, and plenty of fearless conversations.
Until next time, stay bold, stay informed, and keep showing up where it matters.
See you next time on Capital Courage with Rena and Ryan.